Alright, hello once again. This is Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College. And as part of the Rankin Technical College AWD, or Application and Website Development Program, and in particular the AWD1111 .NET Framework with Web Databases class, I've been doing a series of video presentations based on the book that will be used for the class in the fall 2019 semester. The book, as you can see on your screen, is Pro ASP.NET MVC5 in 8-press text by Adam Freeman. I'm up to Chapter 16 of 27, and many of these chapters are taking a lot longer than I thought, so I'm going to, if I can, I'm going to try to pick up the pace. What does that mean? Well, I've already cut down, and I'm not doing the unit tests, but some of these chapters are 40 or 50 pages long, even without the unit tests. And in order for me to meet my schedule, I'm going to have to do at least a chapter a day. So, and ideally more than that. So, like I said, I'm just going to pick up the pace. All right. In the last chapter, we were shown the routing system to handle incoming URLs, but as it says, we also need to be able to use the URL schema to generate outgoing URLs that can be embedded to the views. So when the user clicks links and submits forms to the application, they will target the correct controller. So in this chapter, as it says, we will be shown different techniques for generating outgoing URLs. All right. Here is very quickly the chapter summary. As you can see, there are 34 pages. All right, we're going to continue to use the URLs and routes project. I don't know if I have that up or not. Yes, I do. Now, in the last chapter when we were doing this, I would add some stuff and then comment it out, sometimes remove it, sometimes not. As needed, I will remove things to get stuff to work. All right, we need to make a couple of changes. First, we have to delete the additional controllers folder and the home controller CS file that it contains. Alright, so that's done. We need to simplify the routes in the application, so edit the route config file so that it matches what is shown in figure 16.1. Pretty much is the generic one that you'd get when you start. Just going to remove them. Not remove, shut just about everything that's open here. Alright, so we're, like I said, we're pretty much back to the generic vanilla one that we started with. Later in the chapter, the author is going to describe the areas feature of ASP.NET MVC. As it says, it requires a new package to be installed into the project, so enter the following command into the NuGet console. One thing I'm learning from this, and unfortunately it took me many chapters to learn it, but once I get in here, tools, you've seen this before, NuGet package manager console, we'll bring it up, and I will paste this in. Okay, so I did install that. I was going to say I didn't want to hit enter yet, but that's why. I got to make sure that I put this into one line of code, and I did not do that here. Minus project name, URLs and routes. Okay, says it already exists, so that's good. I need to make two changes to the unit test project. I'm not going to worry about that because we're not working on the unit test. So, and the author says also we need to add the MVC5 package so we can use some helper methods. That should all be on one line right now. There we go. Okay. Oh, it's for the testing package. We didn't need that. All right. That's okay. Not a problem. Again, that was for the unit test folder, which I don't have in here. All right. In almost every MVC framework application, you'll want the user to be able to navigate from one view to the other or to another, which will usually rely on including a link in the first view that targets the second one. It's tempting to add a static A element like this, but the author says manually doing something like this is quick and simple, but it's extremely dangerous and it will break all of the URLs you have hard-coded when you change the URL schema for the application. So in other words, don't do it. Rather, as mentioned here, starting on the bottom of page 417, the simplest way to generate an outgoing URL in a view is to call the HTML.ActionLink helper method. All right. So this is the addition made to views shared action name. Let's make sure we have that. Views shared. There's action name. All right. And right before the bottom of the method, or right before the bottom of the view, I guess it is, we've added that. This is an outgoing URL. The parameters to the action link are the text for the link, this is an outgoing URL, and the name of the action method that it should target, custom variable. You can see the results of this action by starting the app and allowing the browser to navigate to the root URL. So as always, let's do a file. I don't like this showing here in red. So let's do a file, save all, and let's run the program. There we're at our root URL, so I can click there, and you'll notice it works. So as it says, the HTML, the action link method generates is based on the current routing configuration. All right. It says this may seem like a long path to recreate the manually defined URL shown earlier, but the benefit is that it automatically responds to changes within the route configuration file. So as the author said, we have changed the route and added a new one. So let's go into the register routes. All right. The new route changes the URL scheme for requests that target the home controller. If you start the app, you will see this change is reflected in the HTML generated in the helper method. So in other words, if I save this, run the program again, note first of all it still works, but if I view the page source, the author is saying that this is different, and it may be that it's different once we click it, but we're getting the same information. Okay. All right. Understanding outbound URL route matching. Again, this stuff is so doggone heavy. I don't expect you to understand it. I don't even know if I fully understand it. I understand the concept of what's going on. But again, this is the kind of thing that unless you'd be working with it on a regular basis, it probably would be pretty hard to understand exactly what's going on. Well, and that's kind of interesting because in my handout here, because I've got a hard copy of this, I'm missing pages 420 and 421. 418, 17, 18. Nope, I'm missing 19 and 20. But the author says here, you have seen how changing the routes that define the URL schema changes the way that outgoing URLs are generated. Applications will usually define routes, and it is important to understand just how routes are selected for URL generation. The routing system processes the routes in the order they were added to the route collection object. We've already been told that. In other words, the most specific ones should be listed first, the most general ones last. Each route is inspected to see if there's a match where 3 conditions must exist. Whoops. A value must be available for every segment defined. That was that liberal conservatism thing we talked about in the last chapter. Number 2, none of the values provided for the segment variables may disagree with the default only variables defined in the route. So they'll have to be the same types. For this route to be a match, we must take care not to supply a value here for my var, or to make sure that the value that we supply matches the default value, kind of what we just said. Finally, the values of all segment variables must satisfy the route constraints. To be clear, the author says here on page 420, the routing system does not try to find the route that provides the best route. It only finds the first one. Okay, it's agnostic as far as, you know, hey, if it matches, cool, and if it doesn't, it doesn't. All right. Targeting other controllers here, I am on page 420, but I'm also up to about 13 minutes right here. So what I believe I'm going to do is I'm going to stop right here and pick it up in the next part.